Awesome. We are up and running. Alright guys, I think we're up and running. This is the first stream, so let's make sure I do this right. But today we're going to talk about some news that that affect the real estate market, and it's... We're going to talk about some... Oh, right, there you go. Alright, okay. I'm sure I'll figure it out how to do it better next time. Alright. Okay, so let's just send it out so people know that we are live. If you guys don't follow me on Instagram, I'm posting it there currently. Live right now. Okay. And then one last thing. All right. Alrighty, so let's throw that out there. Let's throw that out there. Okay. Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about some of the real estate news going on, and currently we have 4 topics I want to talk about. There's 4 articles that I think might be really interesting and useful for a lot of people. We're going to talk about the top real estate markets that USA Today is predicting for sales growth in 2024. I have my own opinions about that. I'm curious why and what they say. Well, I guess we're going to see what's going to happen, but that's something good to talk about. We got Grant Cardone talking about the real estate crisis and things like that. We got some understanding of how the rents that are potentially decreasing currently could affect the Fed and how they would approach the rate cuts and how that can actually affect back the market, and I'll give you guys my opinion about that as well. Some of these news are very interesting, especially if you're a real estate investor looking to buy your first home, or you're just in general looking to buy your first home, or you're looking to invest more in real estate, or if you're a real estate wholesaler, you can kind of understand because in the end of the day, we're all affected by this, and so I think this is good to know for everyone. All right, so let's start with the top 10 markets that currently. I'm curious if everyone can hear me. If anyone is, good morning, Dimrat. I see you, chat. Thanks for joining in today. So let's talk about the real estate markets, and it's very interesting because over the past couple of years, obviously, we've seen the shift in the markets. Obviously, since COVID happened, you saw all these markets that were not as popular, right? I mean, Florida used to be a retiree state, and now it is what it is now. And I live here, I invest here, and I wholesale here, so I see what happens. Same thing happened with Texas. Yes, it was a good state to live in, but it wasn't as prominent and as popular as it is now. So, but markets like California, New York, and things like that kind of lost their charm to real estate investors and first-time buyers, and some of that was of course because of remote work and things like that. So I think since we're seeing more and more jobs not go remote, I do see that change potentially happening. But let's see what USA Today has to say. So obviously they talk about the lack of inventory, and it still is the case. I mean, even though it is completely different, there's still lack of inventory no matter what someone tells you. But what we're seeing, I mean, currently already, we already saw interest rates drop for mortgages over the past, I'd say 2 months. In October they were 7.8%, and currently they are at 7%. So obviously that 0.8% may not seem like a lot, and it's not a lot for a $200,000 home or $300,000 home. But if you get into these markets that are California, New York, you're obviously not buying a $300,000 home because they're not very available out there. So most of those markets, they do have houses of $500,000 and more. So on a $500,000 home or $1 million home, 0.8% is a quite drastic change in your rent, in your mortgage payment. So I can see how lower mortgage rates could affect more expensive markets to raise the sales. So I do see that point. We'll see if that will happen, of course. There's other problems and things like that why people have moved out of California, out of New York and other states. So let's talk about some of the things they mentioned. So what's interesting, most of the cities that are predicting to raise on prices for the next year are in California. One of them is in Toledo, Ohio, which is very interesting, right? So a lot of people may not even know where Toledo, Ohio is, but it's been a growing market for the past couple of years. We've known about it as a market that has a lot of, as you can see, job growth. So it's very interesting to see where that leads. And I think if I was living in Ohio, I would definitely be invested in Toledo, Ohio, if it was close enough for me. Currently, I live in Florida, so it's a little bit hard to do distance investing. It's not impossible, but not currently something that I'm doing. Some of the other cities that they're mentioning when it comes to California, they say it's not the Bay Area or the Northern California. It's more Oxnard, San Diego, Riverside, Bakersfield, and Los Angeles, which is, again, really interesting because these are the markets that you saw fall so hard during the COVID times and right after COVID up until today. So it's very interesting to see what will happen. I mean, average decline on the California market was 4%. So in the last, I'm assuming that's the last year. So they're predicting 13% growth on average. They're predicting to go from 4% to 13%, which means a 17% change in California markets. I'm not 100% sure that this will happen, but I do see where they're coming from. Again, those interest rate cuts affect expensive markets a lot. Next year, they're predicting to have at least between 3 to 6 interest rate cuts. And if those happen, which most likely will be 25 basis points, and if that happens, the interest rate will probably come down anywhere between 0.75 to 1.5%. I do predict that I think the rates by the end of next year will be closer to 6%, which will affect again expensive markets. If you have a 6% interest rate, or back in October it was almost 8% interest rate, that affects those markets a lot. So I think they know what they're saying. Here looks like Toledo, Ohio is top housing market for the next year. I mean, the home price is $200K, so obviously it's not because of the rate cuts. It is mostly because of how the area has been progressing and what it's becoming. So I do think that it's interesting to see what Toledo will do. I do like that area. I think I've read a lot about people that invest in there. Honestly, if I was closer, like I said again, I would definitely invest. You got Oxnard, California, Rochester, New York. Again, not too expensive. I'm very curious what's going on in Rochester. They didn't even talk about it. They didn't talk about it too much in the article, but we'll see what happens. San Diego, Riverside, Bakersfield, Springfield, Massachusetts, and Worcester, Massachusetts. Again, a little bit more high price range. I mean, you have a median price of $475 in Worcester. Springfield, not sure what's in Springfield, but I'm assuming there's some growth going on there as well. So, and then you got Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Los Angeles. I think Grand Rapids, Michigan, I think is one of those areas, kind of like Toledo, is also growing a lot, and it's not cheap. I mean, paying $400,000. And then obviously you look at Los Angeles. I think this is hilarious. Median home price in Los Angeles at $1.15 million. I mean, $1.15 million. You guys can just put it in the calculator, in the mortgage calculator. What's the difference between a $1.15 million home and at 8% interest rate or 6% interest rate? It's absolutely insane. You know, honestly, I think I might just do that. We're gonna go ahead and do that and calculate it. So let's say $1.15 million home, okay? So at 8% interest rate, your mortgage payment is $8,438. Obviously, this doesn't include your taxes, insurance, all that good stuff. If you had 6% interest rate, you went down by what? By almost $2,000. I think it's like $1,500 or $1,800 difference, and that's absolutely insane. I mean, you can same price home, 2% interest rate difference, $1,500 difference. So that's why I say I do think interest rate cuts will affect the more expensive markets more than they'll affect any other market. So this is interesting to see, so I understand why they're predicting this. I'm assuming a lot of people are sitting on the sideline in those cities. Let's talk about the next thing. Grant Cardone, the guy that's everywhere and, you know, as a big real estate investor, talking about a correction that will happen in real estate. It's kind of contradicting the previous news article. I don't know what I think about what he says. I think it's very popular to say, hey, things aren't going to go bad, everything is bad, everything is horrible. I think that's a very standard and very popular way to get your name out there and to get people more panicking and say, oh no, you know, things are going to go bad. You know, the article posted, you know, it's everywhere. People are sending it to each other, like, because that's something that people expect. People think that because the markets rose so much, it's time for them to come down. So I feel like it's not weird for people to hear that the markets are going to come down so much. So I think him talking about it is absolutely really doesn't mean much. He says that it's going to be a great opportunity for individuals, regular everyday people to actually grab trophy real estate from institutions. That has never happened in our country. There are some other stuff going on with institutions, how the Congress is trying to block institutions. I'm probably going to talk about that tomorrow in our lives. There's very interesting stuff going on, but from his perspective, for what he's saying here at least, he's not saying particularly why. He's just saying it out there. He believes that that's what's going to be the case. I read through this, and this is what he says, is that interest rate will come down in order for pricing to come down. This is actually a contradiction to what most people think. But when interest rates come down, mortgage application will go up and people will start selling their homes. That is his opinion. In my opinion, I don't really think that that's how it's going to work. There's a lot of people that are kind of holding back because they're waiting for those interest rates to come down. And I mean, people not just that own a home and they want to buy another one. Most of the people that actually want to buy a home, their first home. So I think all those people are gonna come back from the sidelines and they're gonna flood the market, which is gonna increase the prices of homes. So I do think we're in this cycle of, honestly, if you can if you can afford a home with the interest rate that there is now, go ahead and do it. And if it requires you to refinance it in a year or so, you will have to do that. And if that makes sense, you will do that. Obviously, refinancing costs you extra money. Refinancing is not free, but that might make sense, right? Especially if you locked in at 8%. Again, you're in California, you locked in at 8%, and now you're going to be at 6%. If you are at $200,000 home, that 8% to 6% affects you some, but it doesn't affect you enough to for it to be worth it to pay a lot of money to reinvest the home. Because when you refinance the home. When you refinance the home, it's pretty much like you closing again, so you're paying all the closing costs. So in my opinion, it may not make sense for those type of people, but for the ones that have a $200,000 home, $250,000 to $300,000 home. But if you got $1 million home, it might make sense. So that's honestly the only thing that he said. But obviously the article is screaming that everything is gonna go bad. I don't think he bases it on anything besides his own feeling. So honestly, I don't expect this to happen, at least not from the reasons, or not because Grant Cardone said it. So we're gonna talk about this thing first, and then I'm gonna dive into a very interesting thing that's not on articles. It's actually my mortgage broker that mentioned this to me, and I read into Fannie Mae Fannie Mae guidelines, and it's very interesting. So first of all, on this article, Wall Street Journal talks about that despite record home prices, homes are about to drag inflation down. So this is really interesting because I personally didn't know this before this article, but so apparently the CPI, where the Fed, right, they look at it every however months when they meet, and they look and they decide if they want to raise the interest rates or lower the interest rate or leave them where they are. So that CPI is apparently 35% of that CPI is based on shelter. So this time, for example, the last one in November, year-to-year rise of shelter was 6.5%. If you take it out of it, what this says, the inflation would only be 1.4%. However, we had 3.1%. Either way, I know it's a little confusing, but it was 3.1%. If you took shelter out, it would have been 1.4%. So about half. So this can show you how strong of a factor is housing when it comes to the CPI, which means if housing declines, if housing prices for people decline, the CPI will show a better report. The Fed will cut rates, right? So here's very interesting. So apparently shelters are based on rents, not housing prices. So the Fed does not look at housing prices, they look at rents, which rents have fallen. I can tell you guys myself, obviously we own 9 units, 9 doors ourselves, and we manage 5 others. So I do see the decline, slight decline in rents. It's not a decline that it's now cheap, but it's not a standard raise in rents that you expect. So we haven't seen that. We had to keep most of our rents the same price as last year. If people stayed in the house, if we had to rent it out again, we might have to reduce rent by like $50 to $25. So it's a slight decrease, but not drastic enough to really make a difference. However, it is predicted that it will happen probably a little bit more, and if that happens, what would that make? What will that do to CPI? To the CPI report is that if the rents go down, the inflation will be shown like it went down a lot as well, which will loosen up Fed's hands to lower the interest rate. And if they lower the interest rate, will make houses prices go up again, and I think the rents will go up again as well. So that's why they say that a real estate market is like a cycle. It's like a wave. It's up and down. It's like stocks. It goes up and goes down. It's unpredictable. But it's not unpredictable, but it's not stable, right? It always goes up and down. It's not one straight line the whole time. But this is the reason why. And this actually shows very interesting things, so that they do calculate you as a homeowner. However, they don't look at your mortgage payment. What they look at is and say, hey, you live in a single family home that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. They look at other houses in the area that rent that are 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and you are also based on that. So they don't look at your mortgage payment. They compare your home to other homes in the area and you are that also are similar. And so they don't look at your mortgage payment. They compare again your mortgage payment doesn't matter. Other homes in the area that are similar, and what price they're renting. So because of all of this, again, your mortgage payment doesn't matter. Rent matters more. Again, very this contradicts to what. So because of all of this, obviously if they cut interest rates, more people are going to buy houses. This contradicts to what from that point I do believe had to say that house prices will rise. More people are going to buy houses. And when house prices rise, less people are going to want to buy houses. The more people are going to want to rent. That house prices will rise. And when house prices rise, less people going to want to buy houses, the more people going to want to rent. Follow
and it's kind of like a cycle that goes on forever. They talk about Seattle here and the area. But overall, I think you can see this, as you can see here on the graph, for example. It says the housing inflation. They talk about Seattle here and the area.
Down a little bit.
But overall, I think you can see this, as you can see here on the graph. And then the rents, you says the housing inflation can kind of
cool down a little bit. I mean, obviously it went down, cooled down a little bit.
And then the rents
year over year,
which is really interesting because
a couple times actually,
as you can see, this is
have
from
went down.
They went down after the COVID,
year over
and then
year,
they
which is really interesting
again.
Because
they're picking back up.
This is from
and
2021.
I see that a lot on Zillow.
They went down after the COVID,
and then they're going down again. They're picking back up, and I see that a lot on Zillow as well. So I do think.
Wait, what? Sorry, I feel like somebody messaged me that my life is not in a. Wait, what? Sorry, I feel like somebody. Sorry, I feel like somebody messaged me that my life is not in a. Oh, I see. I see. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. Oh, I see.
Yeah, what happened?
I see. Okay, I'm gonna go.